Welcome to the Find Your Leadership Confidence podcast with Vicki Noethling. You are about to discover impactful lessons that help you grow as an individual, grow your confidence, and find the positive and good within you, so you powerfully and authentically become the best version of yourself. Be sure you visit our website at www.findyourleadershipconfidence.com. While you're there, subscribe to us via your favorite network. Now tune in, get ready, and enjoy the journey of emerging as a leader of exception in the 21st century.
Welcome, everyone, to the Find Your Leadership Confidence podcast. I'm your host, Vicki Noethling, coming to you from Roswell, Georgia. The goal of this podcast is to bring topics and guests that will empower you to become that confident leader and take your business and your life to the next level. Today, I am happy to have as my guest Philip Sessions, and let me tell you about Philip. He is a Christian husband, girl dad, and the most persistent person you will ever meet. Philip went from being shy, quiet, to one of the people who commands any room he enters. Through his persistent efforts and transformative communication methods, he has helped hundreds of business owners build confidence and clarity in their speaking, which has transformed their lives and businesses amounting to over $1 million in recognized profits. So we're going to talk just about that, building confidence through speaking. So please join me in welcoming my guest, Philip Sessions. Philip, so happy to have a fellow lover of finding confidence through speaking.
Yes. Oh, Vicki, thank you so much for having me on the
It's
podcast. It's exciting to be here. And yes, we're talking about an awesome subject, or at least you and I think. Hopefully
yeah,
some of the audience feels that same way, but whether or not, we're going to have a fun conversation.
yeah. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute, but I start with two easy questions for you, the guest. And that first one is, where do you call home? Where do you live right now? And then the second would be to talk a little bit more about your backstory of what has really brought you to where you are today in this journey. So first, where do you live?
Yeah, I live in Greenville, South Carolina.
So you're not so far.
Yeah, not too far away from you over there in Georgia. And
Mm-hmm.
actually, I lived in Statesboro for a year and then came back to Greenville, but originally from a small town called Hockley, Texas, about an hour and a half outside of Houston, Texas. So
Mm-hmm.
huge change going from really the big metropolitan, but outside it was about the same over here
Mm-hmm.
to the upstate of South Carolina.
Yeah. Greenville's changed quite a lot.
It has.
I
And I've been here for almost a decade now. That
Yeah. So you were
November will be a
during that
decade for
change.
me.
Yeah, you saw the
And
changes. Yeah.
yeah, BMW has been a big factor in that here, the plants here
Mm-hmm.
in
Yeah.
Greenville, Spartanburg, whatever you want to
Yeah.
call it,
It's
area.
really a great town to live in for sure. My in-laws have a lake house on Lake Hartwell, which is
Okay.
only 30 minutes from Greenville. So I get to spend a little bit of time in Greenville from time to time when I'm there.
Yeah. Hartwell's a very
Mm.
nice lake.
Yeah, it's very, very nice.
Yeah.
So, uh, we gave kind of highlights of your journey, but I'd love for you to really share so that the audience can get to know you a little bit better, but also understand how you realize that, being able to speak good can really help you get where you want to go in life.
Yeah, so this goes back to third grade. Whenever I was probably the most introverted, still kind of kept that introverted for quite a while after that. But in third grade, I had missed a day of school. I come back to school, and the teacher, I asked her, what did I miss? She didn't even know I missed. I was that quiet, that introverted, would just never talk. And it wasn't until about college where I really started to get out of my shell. with everything except for trying to have romantic relationships with women. I still was shy, wouldn't go up and talk with them and everything. Now happily married with two beautiful little girls. So luckily I got over that and I don't have to worry about that anymore. I can't
Oh,
imagine dating right now, but that's for another time and another conversation. But another part of where this kind of stemmed for me was going to business conferences and seeing how speakers just impacted the room, how they impacted me as well.
mm,
And it kind of all came together for me through a job where I finally, enough was enough. That was the thing I told myself. I was not going to be talked to this way anymore, because that previous job to that one and that current job where that was finally enough's enough. I'm not letting this happen again. I was called the young, dumb engineer. Now, young part, I understood. I was
mm.
early 20s at that point, but the dumb part really didn't make sense.
Yeah,
On
yeah,
top of that, in both roles, or both companies, I was the one doing majority of the work. I was
of
going
course.
and doing all the commissioning for this equipment when I was in the oil and gas industry, going states away by myself, figuring it out, and things that were really outside of my role, figuring that out as well. And then when I was at the role where it was finally enough's enough, I was actually we were going to engineering meetings weekly, talking about all the projects we're working on. I would speak for 50 minutes of the hour-long meeting about all my projects. And so I had a lot going on compared to these senior engineers, and they didn't think of me this way, but my manager did. And would be
Mm,
like, well, hey, maybe you should work more hours instead of just working 40. I'm only on salary, so it just didn't make sense to me. But just getting belittled time and time again, I realized that I wasn't speaking up for myself. And so finally, enough was enough. And I found throughout my career after that, that as I spoke up for myself, I got
yeah,
paid more. I got recognized more. People wanted to be around me more because I was willing to speak up. And so that's how I found having that confidence in myself and just starting out with saying, enough's enough. You've got to make a change and just start speaking up for yourself at a minimum. I found that through that confidence, I was able to get further in the career
yeah.
than when I just sat back and kind of did the work and didn't try and ruffle any feathers or defend myself or anything like that. And I'm definitely a lot happier because of it
Mm,
too, because I don't let people roll over me now.
yeah. And, you know, similar situation. And I think part of the reasons why my career now includes speaking, coaching, and also coaching for being a better manager, a better leader, is because of those leaders that I had that were just like yours,
Mm.
that didn't really know how to lead well. And communication is a huge piece of it. There are all kinds of ways for that manager to have dealt with you, and he chose all the wrong way.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah, for sure. And communication, and you'll probably agree with this. It's definitely a majority of it, but I'd say 95+% of the problems that we have comes down
Absolutely.
to communication, and typically a lack
Absolutely.
of communication. There are times that I've worked with people that really over communicate, but I would much more rather have that person over communicating to the point that's like, all right, that's enough meetings, that's enough emails, versus not communicating at all or communicating so little
Mhm.
that or you're constantly pulling out of them to try and get information.
And I think too, whenever you talk about that, it's what you say. I always comment on the fact that it is important to say what matters, you with the end in mind, if you will, but also how you say it is just so important. You can say things in a way that will motivate and inspire, or you could say the same words in a way that demotivates and that maybe frustrates, angers, or whatnot. And so we always, in communication, it's not only verbal, although you and I work to teach people the verbal, but I think you learn a lot of being a good verbal speaker, um, to be a better writer, because those text and emails can be sent and read without any of what you wanted them to get from that, the tone of a written thing. And I think the more that we become accomplished in speaking in person or online, will help us be a better communicator in the written form as well.
Completely agreed, because then you really think about the whole context there. And I like to share this story because it's a silly story, but it really helps understand this concept that we're talking about. And this was a while back, but my wife and I, have a house and we have a dog, and we have like a dog food bowl where he eats out of in the breakfast nook, and we've got the dog food container in the laundry room. Well, we had this wonderful ant infestation one day, and I was telling my wife, like, oh my gosh, we thought we had gotten rid of all of them. And then I'm like, oh my gosh, there's ants by the dog food. And then not 30 minutes later, she comes back to me. She's like, oh my gosh, there's ants by the dog food container in the laundry room. And I'm like, yeah, that's what I said. And she's like, oh, I thought you meant by the dog food bowl in the breakfast nook. And then it dawned on me, here I am. I'm supposed to be teaching on communication and how to speak better. In my mind, I had all the information and I knew I was talking about in the laundry room, but I didn't say that. I just said the
Mm-hmm.
dog food. And so it was left up to her to interpret that. Now you could say she should have asked a clarifying question of, do you mean the dog food bowl in the breakfast nook, or do you mean the dog food container in the laundry room? And then of course I could have answered it, but I, as a good communicator, should have added that little extra in there of in the laundry room or
Yeah.
in the breakfast nook kind of thing. Just that little bit of extra would have had that conversation be totally different later on, or not happen at all. But instead, we decide to leave out that little bit of extra, thinking, oh, it's not necessary because you know it up here in your head. And so as a communicator, we have to think about those things. What's the context that people need to have in order to have this information? And it's okay if they already have it, they already know about it, because you want to make sure you're being effective with your communication. So adding that little extra seems a little inefficient at the time, but it's much more efficient in the long scheme of things.
Absolutely. And I think it's a good thing to remember, because we are in such a fast-paced world that we tend to rush through things, and we do give, just enough information to get by sometimes. But then that could have a total, think about directions and things like that, that you may have even a project that you want someone to do. You give them a limited amount of what it takes to do that project. And then when they're done, they follow that limited amount, but there were some key things you forgot to tell them. And then it's messed up. And how do you react to them messing it up?
Yeah. Yeah. And we're both in the South, so you know about this saying, but oh, it's
Mm-hmm.
over yonder. Well, how
Mm-hmm.
far is over yonder? If you're not from the South, you don't even know about that term, first of all. But secondly, nobody can tell you that over yonder is this distance away. So it's the same thing when we're not giving all that context. We're hoping that somebody can figure it out or just kind of go in a direction and get there. It's not a good method for communication for sure.
Yeah. So we've been talking about in person quite a lot, but one of the things that I coach on is being engaging on any stage. And so online is one of the things that, it's not going to go away. It's just such a wonderful way for the world to be smaller. And the more you're effective being communicating in this virtual environment, the more successful you'll be. So, how do you share insights and tips for people to be more confident on camera?
By just doing it. I mean, we all have this wonderful thing called a phone. Well, it depends on the day, if it's wonderful or not, how it's working, how much you're getting inundated into it.
Yeah.
But the beautiful thing about your phone is that you can take a video. and you can go post it on social media or not. But that's like the first step I like to tell everybody is just start doing videos. And it could be about your food, it can be about the weather, it could be about what's going on in your day-to-day relationships. Doesn't matter. Just start talking, because you need to get the reps in. It's kind of like trying to go run a marathon, and you're trying to prepare for everything, but you never actually go and attempt to run it all. You think,
Mm-hmm.
okay, I'm going to need to be hydrated. I'm going to need this. I'm going to need to stretch, all these things, but you never ran. So you don't really know how well you're going to be able to do at that marathon. Maybe the first time you run, you happen to be able to run 26.2 miles. Most likely not if you never ran, but you just never know. And I'm not saying go out there and just run a marathon immediately, but you need to actually start taking some action towards what you're trying to do, be a better speaker, by just starting to speak. And you'll start to see those things that you need to work on. A lot of times people worry about filler words, the ums, the ahs, the and the double clutches, things of that nature. That may not be a problem for you. Your problem may be that you're looking down, and if you're on video, you see this. I'm not even looking at the camera right now. I'm just looking at my microphone, and it's kind of weird because I'm not
With
making eye
you.
contact with
Mm-hmm.
you because I'm not looking at
Yeah.
you. And this is the same thing if you're in person. You may just be looking off and never looking at the audience, or only looking at one person. But you won't know if that's a problem that you have until you start doing it. Hands in your pockets, whatever it is. So I always instruct to start doing videos, because most likely only your mom's going to see the first 10, 15, 20,
That's right.
200 videos anyways. So it doesn't matter if you're terrible or not, but getting through those reps is going to make you better.
Yeah.
So that's where I always like to start, is just start doing a video, whether you post it on social media or not. And once you get comfortable with it, then start to be uh, topic specific. So if you want to start talking about business, then start talking about business things, personal side, or maybe you did some research on something, you read an article, you heard economy update, whatever it is, you can just say your 2 cents on it, share your perspective on it. What did it means to you in your life? Somebody's going to start to resonate with that. And through doing that video content, you start to build up your repertoire for being able to speak better, but also getting known for the things that you speak on. Because even though we see a ton of videos and people doing videos all the time out there, there's more people not doing videos than people that are doing videos right now. So that's a way that you can stand out in anywhere, entrepreneurship or corporate America.
So very true. Yeah. Suck in the beginning so that you'll be good whenever you have at least 20 people watching you for sure.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
um, whenever you get out there, there are people, I call them the preachers, who are screaming at you in the video. And then you have people that have a really soft tone. But if you keep it always at 10 or always at 1, that isn't great. So talk to us about how you can modulate your vocal variety.
Great question. And yes, you don't want to keep it one tone, whether it's 10 or 1. Neither one is really great. There's times and places for each, but yes, you want to start to work on emphasizing things that are important in that sentence. And so I'm trying to think of a good example here. Yeah, I'm blanking out on something to talk about.
I always use to practice nursery rhymes,
Mm,
because if you have to engage a little 1-year-old or 2-year-old, if you have the same tone the whole time doing Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, nobody's going to pay attention to you. But if you start to use your volume changing and your expressions on your face and gestures, that child is enraptured in what you're saying. And I think it's the same with any conversation you have. It generally, if you don't think about the conversation, your voice does go up and down as you're excited or scared or whatever. And that's what you want to have, right? You want to get to
mhm.
that conversational tone that allows and really affords that vocal change.
Yeah. Yeah, I appreciate you saving me there on the example. That's a great way of doing nursery rhymes, but just finding things that you're normally going to talk about, and again, going through and practicing that. How would you actually say this to really emphasize that? And I've been in the manufacturing environment for quite a while, and one of the things is like downtime. So downtime is an important thing, but if I just say, "Hey, the line's down right now. We need some help over here," nobody's gonna be like, wait, what? Like, is this an important thing or not? Like, I'm confused. But I'm like, hey, look, the line's down. I really need your help right now. Like, I emphasize, really need your help right now. And I got my voice raised up a little bit versus, hey, by the way, the line's down. Like, like, okay, is there actually a problem? So you want to make sure, yeah, that tone matches with what you're talking about. And kind of going into that a little bit, your facial expressions also. My sister was always bad about this. She was always just a smiley person. I am as well, but she was worse about it when it came to being angry. So I'm so angry at you right now. Like, and you're like, but you're smiling. Like I'm confused. You're smiling, but you're mad. So it really throws it off. So not only your voice, the tonality of your voice needs to change and modulate based on what you're trying to say, but also your face, we can add that in there. I would say it's almost like a 201 thing. Start to work on your face and your hand gestures, but really getting your voice tonality down first will be a first spot. So yeah, using nursery rhymes, like you said, going back on situations that you've dealt with before, and hey, how would I actually say this to, put more emphasis on something? I need your help, not just I need your help. I need your help right now, kind of thing, or right now. Like you can emphasize different words and see how that sounds, and start to pay attention to how people react to that as well as you start doing that in real world situations.
So when we talk about real world situations, and I was in corporate for over 40 years, and I always loved when every so often you would get a great presenter that injected into their presentation stories. And they may be personal stories to get you loosened up, or they may be personal story or uh, business situation stories to help you understand. But then you had the other people that just gave you bullet point, bullet point, bullet point, and you didn't remember any of those things. And so talk to us about the importance of being a storyteller in any conversation or presentation you're having.
I'll give an example first here. So I bet a lot of the audience is probably married, and they've probably made their spouse upset. You remember more about the situation and how upset your spouse got about something versus the thing that made them upset. And that's what a story does for us. It makes us remember, and we don't necessarily always remember the details, but we can remember the person. And at the end of the day, especially if we're a speaker on a stage or even in corporate America, you want the audience to remember you. And then they can go back and either look you up, or they remembered enough about you. Let's say I'm a sales coach and you just remembered how remarkable I was on the podcast here, and you're like, hey, I want to go talk to Philip about sales now. I don't remember exactly what he did as far as sales coaching, but let me go talk to him because he was just a great guy. He just smiled all the time, or whatever it is. I don't do sales coaching, but just using that as a random example there. But because of the emotion that you felt, you liked me, you felt comfortable with me, you thought I was funny. I don't know, maybe you thought I had a better face for video or for audio than video. Whatever it may have been, it made you attracted to me for some reason and remember me. And that's the thing that I think we don't put enough emphasis on as speakers and people in general, that we're really, at the end of the day, we're kind of selling ourselves. I mean, yes, the message is important, but using those stories makes people get emotionally invested in you and invested in what you're talking about. And yes, it will help them remember more, but at the end of the day, they need to remember who you are so they can go back, because we're there for a reason. If we're in corporate America, we're wanting to get noticed and recognized so we can get that promotion. If we're speaking on a stage, we want to get noticed and recognized so we can grow our business. We can grow our personal brand, be able to create more impact, help more people. So those stories really connect us with the audience on an emotional level, but also just like I mentioned with getting a spouse angry and you remembering being angry or making your spouse angry for whatever reason, we've connected now because of that. But if you're single, you probably didn't because you don't have a spouse. You haven't dealt with that, but maybe you can think about your parents in a fight that they've been in and remember that. So there's some way that maybe we did make that connection, but using those stories allows us to connect with the people that we want to connect with. And so it's important that we use the correct stories. So just like I used the spousal story here, if I was to go to a group of elementary students and try to teach them on public speaking, I wouldn't bring up a story about a spouse and making them angry because they're not in that space. That is not relatable to them. So then you need to find stories that are also relatable to the audience that relate back to you because you want them to remember you, remember what it was like having you speak to them, but it also relates to them. So then hopefully through that, they can take that story and a message, then the takeaways that you want it with that message so they can actually go and implement that into their lives. So it's a little bit about the stories are important so they can remember you, but it also helps them remember it, hopefully remember it better because now it's relatable in some way that and tangible that way that they can go and do that versus bullet point, bullet point, bullet point. It's really hard to remember those bullet points and it just hits the brain synapses in different ways.
I always say I have lots of room in my brain, but it's not for that kind of stuff. I'm so
Yeah,
sorry.
yeah. Exactly.
So whenever you step into a room in person, how do you command that audience? And then I want you to take it to the next level and say, when I step into the virtual room, how do I command that audience?
Mm. It really comes down to your presence and your aura. If you look like, and I'm blanking out his name, Eeyore from Winnie the Pooh, or oh, it's just a down day, and you can just tell like the energy behind who you are in person, especially if you got a big smile on, if you got your shoulders back, your chest up a little bit, to show that you're confident. You're coming into that room. That energy is what really gets exuded is that confidence that you have really turns into competence. And people want to be around those that are confident. They like the person that is sure of themselves. And really, this kind of goes back to leaders. And I'm sure we'll probably get into this a little bit. But the more confidence you have in who you are, self confidence, and of course, confidence in what you're sharing about, the more people will listen to you and they'll follow you because of that. But really, to capture and command the room, it really comes down to the way that you're carrying yourself in that room from the beginning and the way that you start to interact with people. If you just come in and yeah, you can look confident, you can look really good, and you don't have to be dressed up in a three-piece suit or a nice gown for the ladies out there and everything. You just looking, I guess, somewhat presentable, not looking like a slob is definitely something you have to do. But it that's just the start. But as you start to engage with people and you're having conversations with them, people notice, are you smiling still with them? Is the person that you're interacting with smiling with you? And they want to be around those happy, positive people. And so that's how you really command that room, having that positive energy, that positive smile, looking confident in yourself, confident in the people that you're talking to, and comfortable in that room. And through that, other people will start to notice you. And when you do finally come up to them, then they're going to feel that confidence from you. And that's how you really command that room. And then to take it to the virtual stage, obviously you can't walk around the room, but most people aren't going to talk. So if you're willing to start talking first or start to have some kind of conversation first, that's going to start showing that you're commanding that room, because that's where most leaders start to lead, because they're willing to be the ones to take that first step. Let's go back to middle school where nobody wanted to dance on the dance floor, but as soon as that first couple went out, everybody else decided to go out. It's the same thing in that virtual room. When you start to finally talk, instead of sitting there waiting for the person who's leading the meeting to finally talk, you just start talking. That's how you can lead that virtual room. Is then other people are like, oh, okay, we can actually talk. Like, hey, cool, Philip's talking, and they start to recognize you more. It's like, oh yeah, last time I was on the call, Vicki talked. Vicki, we had a lot of fun just chatting about whatever, and you start to build up that rapport and everything. So that's the two different rooms, and how you can really start to command those rooms is by just being positive and starting the conversation.
And I think that's a really good piece of advice. A lot of the networking today is in a virtual environment. And whenever you may have one session where everybody's together and the facilitator is leading it, but then oftentimes they put you out into break rooms and someone, needs to volunteer to be first to talk. So be that person. Be that person to say, I'll go first, and let them get to know you. I always love it after you go through those sessions. If somebody at the facilitator says, so, we'll put into chat or give a shout out to anybody who impressed you. And it's always great when somebody says, oh, I really loved what Vicki had to say, and you're not trying to be that person that's taken control of the room, but that does show confidence in what you do and how you present yourself.
Yeah, completely agreed there. And with that in mind and leadership in mind and everything, people want to follow somebody. What? Unless if they're just a complete arrogant person,
Yeah.
they are willing to fall in line behind somebody, especially when it's not necessarily their project or their money on the line, kind of thing. Like going back to you're talking about the breakout room, people will follow. And as new leaders, especially, and I struggle with this when I first started with leading others, was that, well, who am I to be qualified for that? Are they really going to start leading me? But I realized whether I had a title of leader or not, if I was willing to step up and just start saying, hey, here's the direction we need to go, most of the people, I mean, you've always got that outlier that doesn't matter who you are. They don't want to listen to you unless if you're
Mhm.
their boss, directly their boss in corporate America. But most people will listen because they don't truly want to lead. They'd rather just kind of be the one doing the work or being the participant in it and giving their 2 cents afterwards. So just step up and be the leader, because people want somebody to follow. They want to have some kind of direction. And so that's your gateway into becoming a leader in corporate America, in your own personal
Mhm.
life, wherever it's at. Just step up and command the room. Start taking that action.
One final question. Time has flown by. I knew it would. You and I could probably talk for days on
Oh,
this
yeah.
subject. But the final question, we've talked about business. We've talked about, being able to present on camera and outside. But let's talk about family a little bit more to end this, about how important it is that we lead our family with good communication.
It is vital. And I believe, not to in a male chauvinist way, but I believe that the man is the head of the household. And as men, we are not typically great at communicating, especially our thoughts and our feelings. We just want to, like, here's where we're going, and we just kind of do it. So we really need to communicate the purpose behind why we're doing it and the why behind why we need to go in this direction, and continue to do that over and over again. Because I mean, it doesn't matter which one it is, the wife or the husband. Either way, you have to continue to communicate what's important, what's important, what's important. My wife and I, we actually almost broke things off before we got married, because I had told her at the beginning that the relationship I had with God and going to church and everything was an important thing, and that's was something that was a deal breaker if that wasn't something that she would be on board with to getting married. Is I wanted to raise my children in the church and everything. And as time went on, I kind of mentioned it here or there and stuff like that, but then I kind of stopped mentioning it. I thought this was a standard that was set, and then she stopped kind of coming to church, and so I had to reset that standard and restate it. And then she realized, oh, Philip actually really means that and everything. And so when it comes to the household, whether it's a religious thing or anything, you have to continue to repeat, this is important for me. This is important for me. And something that I know I'm guilty of, that my wife, she'll tell me, hey, can you take out the trash? And I'm like, okay, yeah, no big deal. I'll take it out in 10 minutes. I'll finish up what I'm doing. Well, sometimes she'll get mad at me because I didn't take it out right then and there. Well, I didn't know that she wanted me to take it out right then and there. And so communication is important, to set that expectation, to set that standard, to let others know what you expect out of that. If she would have said, hey, can you take out the trash now? I'd really appreciate that, or in whatever way, but let me know the time frame on it. Then oh yeah, let me do it. Or I could have also then said, well, hey, let me finish this up and then I'll get to it, kind of thing. But if it's like really bothering her or whatever, like, okay, let's talk through that. So communication is very important in the household, because it helps set that standard and that expectation. And there's already so many emotions and so much chaos. I've got 2 girls under 3. There's a lot of chaos in the house. And so if y'all aren't on the same page communicating, all that chaos is just going to multiply because of that. And then it goes down to the children as well. The way that you're communicating to them, if you're constantly just yelling at them, telling them they're doing the wrong thing, eventually they're going to shut down. They're going to be closed off. And it's a very delicate balance. My oldest daughter, she just loves to talk and scream and sing. And I want her to be outgoing and not be like I was, where I was an introvert and wouldn't talk to anybody. So I had to
Yeah.
dance around that a little bit, because I don't want to burn that flame out where she gets excited and she'll just talk to anybody and everybody and be as loud and extroverted as she wants to be. Because if I start to beat that in, like, hey, don't talk, don't talk, don't talk, she's going to start thinking, oh, I shouldn't talk. So I try to also, and of course, she's almost 3. So she doesn't understand it completely, but I try to explain in a way like, hey, this is not the place for us to scream or talk. Your sister's trying to go to sleep, or hey, we're at church right now, we don't do that, or whatever it is. And so try to explain the situation instead of say, hey, don't talk. And so I say all that, rambling on here a little bit, to just really make sure we are communicating that expectation and the reasoning, the why behind why we want something done a certain way is so important in the household, because we got to have the house good and in good order, because there's so much chaos outside of the house. So communication is vital inside the household.
Yeah, a lot of the folks that you and I coach, it's the result of some of the things were said and done as they were children.
Yeah.
Children should be seen, not heard. The lack of creativity, thus us telling them always how to do things and never letting them discover how to do it themselves, and knowing there's more than one way to do things. And then they get into business and we want them to be innovative, creative, and problem solving. And they're like, well, no, you got to tell me what to do, how to do it. So lots of things to consider when we talk about communication of the family.
Yeah, for sure. And there's just one extra little thing there. I mean, and the school's not teaching them how to think for themselves either. I mean, education has gotten worse and worse about that. Just learn this so you can take this test to get the A. It's not about thinking creatively. So we as parents in the house need to work on helping our children be more creative, and then ourselves as well, because you start to not do that creativity or thinking with that type of mindset, you lose it very quickly. So it's something you're continually having to sharpen and practice on.
Yeah, I work with kids that are 9 to 17, and some of the things that I teach them are improv, as well as different, games that we play to make them be creative and innovative in their responses to questions I give them or situations I give them. And it's hard in the beginning, but after that they crave it. And so, okay, you're not getting it in school, but you can come to my class and get it then.
I like that. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's awesome. It's so rewarding too. All right, it is time now for me to share my slide of contact information. If you are thrilled with what you've heard today and you think, oh, I do want to get in touch with Philip to talk to him a little bit more about what he does. And I am going to share a slide that has the contact information. If you're just listening and you don't have anything to write this information down, you can go to my YouTube channel, Vicki Noethling. So please subscribe, as well as my findyourleadershipconfidence.com website. So for those that are just listening, the website is speakingsessions.com. Again, speakingsessions.com. On Facebook, you can go to The Real Philip Sessions. And Philip is only with one L. Sometimes Philip has two, but this Philip has only one L. So The Real Philip Sessions. Instagram is I Am Philip Sessions. LinkedIn is Philip Sessions. TikTok is at Philip Sessions. Twitter is Philip Sessions. And on YouTube, you can find him, Philip Sessions. I'm going to turn it over to Philip Sessions to talk to you about what you can find when you go to his website, his call to action for today, resources that you might have. And if you want to DM him, where he is most frequently at on the social media platforms. Philip, it is all yours.
All right, Vicki. Well, thank you so much. If you want to reach out, I'm very active on Facebook and LinkedIn. Try to be more active on LinkedIn, so would love for you to reach out over there, especially. But if you want to reach out on Facebook, feel free to do that as well. My giveaway for you today, if you go to my website, speakingsessions.com/speech prep. And Vicki, I apologize. I'm going to have to give you this in the show notes to put in there. I want to say Speaking Sessions is the code. I will double check on that. But if you put the code Speaking Sessions, you'll be able to get that for free. Unfortunately, the funnel wouldn't just let me put it for free. So it has a price on there. But if you just type in Speaking Sessions, all one word, it will give you that for free. And I'll verify to make sure about that. But that essentially is just a small digital course to teach you some of the basics on how to get better at public speaking, kind of a speaking 101, if you will. And so, yeah, feel free to reach out to me with any questions that you have.
Awesome. Philip, as I said, we could talk for days and days about this. You and I are like minds. I loved your energy. I loved your stories. And thank you so much for being a great guest.
Yeah, thank you for having me on. And I was there. I'm like, well, while I'm here, I'm going to look real quick. And it is Speaking Sessions, all one word. That is the coupon code there.
The code.
So,
awesome.
Yeah.
Yes. Very good. So that will be in the show notes.
Yeah, but yes, thank you so much for having me on the podcast. This was so much fun. And like you said, we could have been talking for hours and days about all this stuff.
Yeah, for sure. As always, I remind everyone that life is a journey and it's up to you to enjoy the ride. This is Vicki Noethling signing off.
Thank you for tuning into the Find Your Leadership Confidence podcast with Vicki Noethling, where we share impactful lessons that help you grow as an individual, grow your confidence, and find the positive and good within you so you powerfully and authentically become the best version of yourself. Remember to visit our website at www.findyourleadershipconfidence.com and enjoy even more great episodes like this one. Again, while you're here, subscribe to us via your favorite network. We look forward to seeing you next time on the Find Your Leadership Confidence podcast.